Okay, somebody said this. Send me this. Why are trans activists like this? It's from a smaller channel, Skye Productions Commentary. Let's see what we got. What is this? Let's piss off both sides, shall we? If anyone's struggling and need a fix, whatever. Okay, let's see.
Is it just me, or do trans activists give actual trans?
None of these people are trans. This is like weird. These aren't even trans people. Okay. Bro, one of the problems I think with like the LGBT, or excuse me, the pride parades is that they let anybody show up. Or rather, they let any group advocate. For instance, PETA has like a float in the event. Right? So do fucking people who let themselves get walked around on leashes. And I think that's one of the problems with the pride parade is that it should be very centralized around gay rights, gay activism, celebrating Stonewall. Or not celebrating that it happened, but celebrating like overcoming Stonewall and, you know, advocating for LGBTQ heroes, like individuals who were openly gay during times where it was very dangerous to do so. Not this, right? But I don't know how you would say trans activists and then show this. These aren't trans people. These are weird dog people. I don't know, you know?
Trans people a bad rap. And why do they always have crappy anime avatars? Well, this is awkward. And furry trans people a bad rap. And what is it just me, or do trans activists give actual trans people a bad rap?
Okay, she said trans activists, not actual trans people. Okay, never mind. I think I misinterpreted some of that. My bad.
Why do they always have crappy anime avatars? Well, this is awkward. And furry ones at that. So let's have some fun and compare what they have to say to what actual trans YouTubers, you know, the ones showing their faces, have to say. Okay. So according to this dumb tweet, girls apparently go around saying, I like yeah, right. And then they clarify that they only like said dicks on guys.
All right, whatever. That's fine. I mean, it's weird that you'd go around announcing that, but okay.
Before then, apparently, making sure everyone understands they don't date dudes with vaginas. So then they go through the mental gymnastics that genital preferences are transphobic. Let's see what a trans person has to say.
Nobody should be called a bigot for not wanting to date somebody that has the genitalia that they are not comfortable with. If you don't have, you know, sexual attraction to that person, that is a very valid thing. I wouldn't want to date somebody that I wasn't sexually attracted to either.
Exactly, and preferences stretch way beyond gender. Maybe someone's too ginger, maybe someone's too short. None of these preferences.
We're doing Tom Cruise dirty like that. That's actually funny. That's not nice. You know who else is really short? Danny Trejo. You know who that is? He's like 5'8" or something, or 6 rather. But 5'6". I always thought he was huge, but they just portray him like that in the movies. But he's actually a small guy. But good for him, you know.
This is nice if you don't fall into that bracket, but none of us are entitled to anyone dating us. And look at this entitled dumbass using the TERF slur to talk about how.
Has there ever been a more succulent, I don't know, way to reveal yourself as a TERF than saying lesbian is not penis inclusive? It usually isn't.
Lesbian is not penis inclusive. Really?
If you don't want to date a trans person, just don't date a trans person. That's fine. Don't be a butthole about it.
This is also
fair enough.
Pretty fair, right? If you're into someone, consider asking them out. If you're not into someone, don't follow them around with a megaphone shouting in the air exactly why you're not into them. And here's yet another non-trans person virtue signaling hard.
If you have a sexual preference that discriminates against transgender men or transgender women, you are transphobic. Okay. Yeah, this is actually so far this is a pretty good video. It's really just about how like activists are dumb as fuck, and like so activists. It seems to be the case for a lot of activism groups that people who don't really identify with the group are the loudest of the group. So when it comes to black rights, we see a lot of white people shouting and screaming and being very hateful against other white people, whereas you don't really see black people doing that so much. Same thing with trans rights, same thing with gay rights. The issue here is, and this is something a little unique, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, is that you can pretend to be LGBTQ and then advocate for the LGBTQ community. It's a real thing, and some people do that. I'm not saying everybody does that. I'm not saying all activists do that, but I'm saying it's very easy to go, I think maybe I'm gay, or I'm bisexual. Now you can forcefully align yourself with the community of LGBTQ people, even if you don't really have the identification with them, and then you could virtue signal your ass off, and when people say, wow, why are you saying things like this? Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You'd be like, well, I'm actually part of the community. Whereas, let's be absolutely clear, even if you are gay, that has nothing to do with being trans. These are two very different things. So, like, even as a gay person in the LGBTQ community, just because you have an identification with the community doesn't mean you know dick about shit about trans people. So, yeah, it's true.
to try and make trans people look bad. Again, this one demanding everyone dates trans people so they aren't considered transphobic.
I can think of a lot of reasons why someone would not want to date a trans person.
Virtue signaling aside, I'm guessing these rejects can't get laid and are coping badly. I'm also
they're probably dumb fucking kids on Twitter.
pretty sure these trans people can all get dates, which is probably why they're not fussed.
I swear you'd come away with the assumption that trans people are all like lonely and desperate and no one's interested in them, and honey, that's not the case.
I mean, who'd date them?
Well, I will just say one thing about Blair White. Blair White's a very passable trans person, so that may not necessarily be the status. I don't think it's really the status quo perspective or, you know, experience for trans people. You know.
Yes.
What did I say?
Desperate and no one's interested in them, and honey, that's not the case.
I mean, who'd date this?
Friendly but very urgent reminder to all my followers to follow / block something for making racist, transphobic, anti-Semitic jokes. Okay.
Well, apart from this guy here who got married to this
hey, based.
And yes, that is a dating preference that none of us expected to adhere to.
Damn.
But hey, at least
Imagine getting like a dopamine rush from dating a fucking... That's just crazy.
he's happy. Oh yeah, my bad. They're actually having marital issues now because they just can't communicate. Despite tying them in 2018, the company that developed the software for this thing terminated it in March 2020, saying the limited production model had run its course. Seriously though, everyone has personal preferences. We can't just go around cancelling each other for it. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Hey, it's me.
Imagine if we lived...
It's literally me. It's literally me. Oh my god.
Ridiculous. Imagine if we lived in a world where people felt free to tell you what their preferences were. That would make life so much easier, wouldn't it? Not just for dating, but for friendships too. You can find people with the same values.
Well, that's the interesting thing about this though, right? Is that like in the real world, we don't really go around telling each other our preferences. We just look at somebody and go, no or yes. That's pretty much what it is. So when somebody says like, oh, would you date a trans person? You might be like, yeah, you know what? Somebody might say, I personally would, but you might be like, no, I wouldn't. I'm like, okay. And that's really okay, as long as you're not hateful. Like, this is disgusting. No, maybe you just don't. Maybe it makes you a little uncomfortable.
There are some people who just...
Fuck, I just punched. Damn, it hurt. It makes you a little uncomfortable because you don't quite understand what they're going through. Maybe you don't want to date a chick with a wiener. Why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. It's totally fine as long as you're respectful. The problem is that when you ask these like back-ended questions, it doesn't make sense. Like the way we interact is, would you date that person? Yes or no? We don't usually go like, we don't usually ask like the specifics of like, would you date a trans person? That's not like a normal real world interaction. That's like a question from like friends. Hey, would you date a trans person? So it's just weird. And then people be like, yeah, I don't think I would. And then instead of people being like, okay, I kind of get it. Or like, oh, I disagree with you, which is fine both ways. They start to go like, oh, you're transphobic, blah, blah, blah. Even though these young kids probably would never date a trans person either. Or what they'll do is they'll just go through the mental gymnastics and be like, well, I would date a trans person, but these are my specific preferences. They're not transphobic, but then that they really wouldn't date a trans person. That's really what it comes down to.
Just never gel with you, and it's good to know that up front. In my real world experience, trans people are generally really friendly and talkative. Well, not the introverted ones, obviously, but generally they are quite open to discussion, and yes, that means answering questions about their transition. Whereas in the media, no matter what you say, you tend to get this response.
I care about the rights of a minority of people that currently have an 80% suicide rate. That is unacceptable. You're fueling hate and somebody was going to die.
I don't think that they have an 80% suicide rate. I think that they have it's a much higher rate of suicidality, like attempt rate. I think it's like 40-something%, like 41%, I think, 43%.
I mean, sure,
I don't know the specifics of that
this
conversation,
childish
though.
fit is not helpful to the trans community. Shutting down discussions altogether by claiming you're killing people is terrible activism. Childish tantrums like these unfortunately turn important subjects like suicide into a joke. It's also quite...
That guy got a McDonald's hat on? Damn, it's a fake McDonald's hat, too.
upsetting that she misquotes the data. A quick PubMed search took me to an abstract on transgender youth that claims 82% of transgender individuals have considered killing themselves.
Oh, that's very different than the attempt rate. So, like, I think it's like 41%, correct me if I'm wrong, of like the attempt rate from trans people, which is disproportionately higher than, you know, just real people, regular people, you know, the normies as we call them now. But it is disproportionately higher. I would imagine that if you ask people, if you ask somebody, like, have you ever considered killing yourself in your life, you'd have a high answer. I have. Like, I'm not even trying to be that guy. Who hasn't been in a scenario where you sat and you went, damn, I could just... Maybe I should kill myself. But you don't take it seriously. Like, yo, that's bad. It's a bad thought. Intrusive thought, right? It's an intrusive thought. But you know, I mean, I feel like the number would be higher for normal, or not normal people. Sorry, I keep saying that. It was a joke. Now I'm just being stupid. Most people, I feel like, would maybe say that. They'd be like, you know, they've been there before. It's like, I can go to this wedding, or I could just not go to that wedding. You know what I mean? You can find like maybe I just won't go to the wedding. You know?
With 40% having
intrusive thought,
suicide.
right?
Getting something this important wrong in the middle of a hissy fit and pretending it's an 80% suicide rate rather than 40% attempted suicide rate comes across as a petulant child lying to point score.
Have an 80% suicide rate.
Again, how is this helping trans people?
Fucking useless sack of shit! Get out!
And the woke cancel culture mobs have even got politicians scared to answer simple questions like...
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
I can't. Not in this context.
So
I'm not
okay, so for this one, hold on. So for this one, in this instance, I watched it a little bit. I can understand why she didn't want to give it, because conservatives were going to jump all over it regardless. So she's just like, I'm not going to answer the question. I don't actually blame her here. Realistically speaking, like this one was one of bro. I just don't agree on this one. The question of like what is a woman? It's like a very and it's been answered before, but people don't really like the answer. And I know it's like a popular meme to be like, oh, that's a circular answer. But the general answer is like what it means to be a woman is somebody who genuinely feels like they're a woman and genuinely expresses themselves to society as women. Now the next response is like, well, that's a circular question, right? Well, the reality is that when we talk about like expressing, because women feel like women, of course, right? So okay. So you got your we'll do this. We got your cis woman and then you got your trans woman. So what it means to be a woman, I would say, is that you identify as a woman, right? And that you express yourself to society as a woman, right? Cis women obviously identify as women, trans women identify as women, and then cis women express themselves to society as women and trans women do the same, right? So that's it. That's pretty as simple as it is. When people say it's a circular answer because you're not defining what it is to be a woman, realistically speaking, what it means to express yourself as a woman is something that's like that's a massive amount of factors in there, right? One of them could be having a vagina, right? You have a VJ, right? One of them could be that you have ovaries, but like not all women have ovaries or the ability to reproduce. They could be having long hair, but nowadays we don't need to have long hair. It could be obviously to not have a mustache or a beard, but there are some women with PCOS. Right, so you see how we go down the line. It's like, oh, well, you wear dresses, but like not all women wear dresses. Some of them wear jeans, right? And so you see how we can go through every single factor. It's like, oh, well, it might be having like a pear-shaped body or having like thicker hips. Well, not all women have thick hips, right? So then this is where we kind of go down to where there's like a culmination of different factors, but it really is a collective of these different factors in a way that like women generally express themselves based on like the society that they live in, and that's why people will say that it's a circular answer, but it's not really a circular answer. It's just like it's just a lot of information to take in when people mostly don't critically think about it of like what is a woman, because most of the time you operate by like penis vagina. The thing is though is that we don't really do that, right? We don't operate based on who has a penis or a vagina. We operate based on what it looks like, right? On somebody who we don't call somebody a woman based on if they have a vagina. We call somebody a woman based on if we think that they have a vagina, right? So they brought up Blair White before. Earlier in this video, they brought up different trans people. Here you go. This is Blair White. Let me see.
Sure
I want to get yeah. You got Samantha Lux, you got Blair White, and then you have this person. Who's a trans man. It looks like, right? If you saw these two on the street though, Samantha Lux and Blair White, you'd be like, oh, those are girls, and you think that this is a guy, right? Because they are, but you'd be like, oh, it's a girl, it's a girl. So you're not identifying. And if I asked you, do you think that these two should be going in the men's bathroom? You say absolutely not, right? Right, so because realistically speaking, I wouldn't feel comfortable with them being in male spaces. I wouldn't be comfortable with this guy being in a female space. So now all of a sudden, and I would imagine you'd agree with that. Buck Angel, you guys know who that is? Buck, I'm gonna look off screen, hold on, because he's a porn star. He's a trans man porn star. Buck Angel, do you think that you would be comfortable with this guy going into the woman's bathroom? Probably not. I would personally be a little afraid of that, right? So we don't specifically look for genitalia when it comes down to identifying men and women, right? So I think the better question when it comes down to this general argument is less about like what is a woman, and more about what does it mean to be a trans person in a cisgendered space. What is it? You know what I mean? That makes more sense, because I could I definitely understand why you would want to be you'd want to monitor trans women in cisgender women's spaces because they have a biological advantage if they went through a male puberty. I could understand why you'd be apprehensive about a non-passable trans woman going into a female space. I understand, or a woman's space. I can understand why, because that's the thing we don't talk about either, bro. People don't want to talk about it. It's a harsh conversation, but some people aren't super passable, and it can make it conflicts with issues, right? So, like, let's say you have, I know we're doing a lot of pain. Let's say you have a trans woman, and then you have a cis woman, right? These cis women, like, they have their own unique issues, and so do trans women, right? Trans women have the issue of like some kind of a gender dysphoria, right? And they want to be seen as a woman. Cisgender women historically have an issue with being, potentially predatorized by men, and so they're uncomfortable around men, we'll say. So then when you introduce a mixing of a space, let's say a spa, all of a sudden a non-passable trans woman going into a spa could make a cisgender woman very uncomfortable because they're looking at somebody who looks like a man inside of their space, and they're like, fuck, this is scary and uncomfortable. And like, these are the conversations we don't have, right? This is the conversation we need to have, because how do we do these two things together? Because honestly, I could see why you wouldn't want to necessarily let that trans woman in the space. They're not passable. They could be perceived as threatening, you know what I mean? They have a penis, and I know it's weird, but penises, those are fucking weird, bro. Right? Like, nobody, like, vaginas, boobs, those aren't as weird as penises. Penises are like all out there. With a vagina, if a girl spreads it open, then it's like traumatizing, but you know. So there's a lot. This is a very nuanced conversation to have, and it can be very conflicting when you try to have it.
In this context, so I'm not a biologist.
How can this question be such an own? You either cite the dictionary definition, or you just give your own definition to replace it. I have seen friends go from supporting trans rights to quite the opposite based on these so-called activists. In fact, I got some quotes from my once trans supporting friends, and trigger warning, by the way.
I've always supported trans rights, but refusing to define woman is insulting, and I'm done.
The more trans women try to take rights and say—
So this one here, this one, I really wouldn't blame this part. I kind of disagree with. I wouldn't blame this on that woman there. Again, what is a woman is a trick question from somebody, which is Matt Walsh, who has no interest in actually engaging in the conversation about transness. It comes off as a very easy, simple gotcha, so that he doesn't have to engage. You wouldn't start when it comes to trans issues with what is a woman, right? Like, not for nothing, but in the first place that you'd start when it comes to trans issues is like starting by like defining gender dysphoria. Right? You would start with defining gender dysphoria, and then you would operate through there. Like, what is gender dysphoria? What's the treatment for this issue? And then, like, down the line, like, step 6 is like, what is a woman? Right? Like, it's intentionally like a middle of the pack question that requires a conversation about gender dysphoria, which is like a mental health issue. I believe it's still listed in the DSM-5, which I think it should be. Though I can understand why they want to list it as a sexual health condition, because there are conservatives who will invalidate transness based on the fact that it's listed as some kind of a mental illness. But this is where you need to start, and a lot of times, like, Matt Walsh has done a very good job at like pushing a basically like a dishonest misinformation campaign about the conversation around trans people. He's not looking to have an honest conversation. If he was, he would start with the engagement of like, what is gender dysphoria and how do we treat this issue, right? So I would be careful about some of these people who they're putting their anger towards. If you're putting your anger towards people who won't answer that question rather than that question itself. And honestly, what I'm reading here is, I've always supported trans rights, but refusing to define woman is insulting, and I'm done. So to me, that suggests that you say you're supporting trans rights, but now that people can't define women, you don't care about trans people anymore. You never supported trans rights if that was your perspective, right? Like, you're somebody who's like doesn't have quite of a robust understanding about the topic, which is fine. Not everybody has to like sit down and like really engage with this conversation. And you're pretending that you used to be trans affirming when you probably just didn't give a shit. And now that you heard Matt Walsh, you're identifying with that argument. There is definitely an issue with some activism, but some of this is not really correctly critical on the activism itself, right?
But refusing to define woman is insulting, and I'm done.
The more trans women try to take rights and safe spaces away from women, the more I just want to call them men to their faces.
Right. So again, like, this is like kind of, this is not really the good, accurate representation. The more trans women try to take rights and safe spaces away from women, the more I just want to call them men to their faces. So this is not what's happening anywhere in the way that it's being perceived. We just talked about it. Are there instances where trans women could potentially make cisgender women feel unsafe? Absolutely. In sports, in the bathroom, in a spa, especially if they're not so passable, right? Like, a trans woman who went through a male puberty playing in sports could really hurt a cisgendered woman because they have a physical advantage. They have a denser bones. They have like a broader shoulders. They're stronger. They're bigger. They're faster. They're just better at sports, right? So, but these trans women that want to compete with cisgender women, they're not trying to take away spaces or save spaces for women. They are just trying to live life happily as a woman that they feel they should have been born as. So when you have the interpretation that trans women are like, this has an interpretation of trans women are predators in some capacity, right? Where it's more of like, if you think about it, it's like people are trying to do their best in society. It's just trans women are just trying to be seen as valid. And so this is already has like a transphobic perspective on it. Like, this isn't a nuanced take. This is just a guy who, again, never really was trans affirming, pretending to give a shit, but they don't. The take is like, I can understand as a trans woman, you'd want to be, seen as more of a woman. But like, there are going to be instances where we're going to have to distinguish trans women versus cisgender women. Right. So again, this isn't really this person saying this. This is not a real person, but this if this was a real person, they never would have actually been trans affirming. Right.
I have no issues with trans women, but putting on a wig and telling us they're lesbians, what the fuck?
Like, again, there was no instance where this was ever a trans affirming person. I have no issue with trans women, but if you're putting on a wig and telling us they're lesbians, what the fuck? What they're saying is, I have no issues with trans women, but trans women aren't women. They're just men on wigs and saying that they're lesbians. Again, this is all these examples are of people saying transphobic things, pretending that they were trans affirming at one point. You ask us how we know you're male, but none of you pass. Again, transphobic shit.
How we know you're male, but none of you.
And we talked about how, like, the passability can definitely, disrupt the interpretation. But again, like, it's just fucking crazy.
You pass.
Sucking a woman's penis is still gay.
That's. I thought it was a ghost. That's a little true. Okay, I think sucking a woman's penis is still a little bit gay. All right, it's definitely less gay than sucking a man's penis. But it's a little gay. It's still a penis. It's a generally a male thing. That's okay to be a little gay, though. I don't give a fuck. Personally, I wouldn't take it in my ass, but that's too gay for me. But also, to be honest here, because I know people are like, well, Papa, I think that's transphobic. Listen, it's gayer. Listen here, okay? Listen, there's two instances: sucking a trans woman's penis. Issue number one. Situation number two, rather, sucking a cis woman's dildo. Listen. The dildo is gayer than sucking the penis. Okay? Okay? Let me explain to you why. All right? When you suck a trans woman, when you fillet a trans woman, you're doing it for their pleasure. You're satisfying a woman, even though it's a peepee. When you suck a dildo from like a strap-on, there's no satisfaction that woman's getting. That's gay. Okay? That's infinitely gayer. It's true. It's true if you think about it. It's true. Same thing with getting pegged. It's scarier than getting fucked by a trans woman. It's true. It's true. You know that. You know that's true.
So tell me, how are these activists helping trans people again?
Fucking used to suck a shit.
Well, you're losing me at the second half of this video, girl. I'm sorry. Or person. I don't know.
But here's the thing. Just talk to a trans person in real life and you'll
oh my god, it's Tom Dark.
see that it's quite rare that their entire identity revolves around being trans. They're much more likely to be thinking, this commute sucks. What should I have for lunch? My phone screen's cracked again. I need a rose. Tune into social media and it's all...
These parents share what it's like to raise a baby without a gender.
No, this is a good example. Okay, you're getting me again. Yeah, this is like fucking ridiculous. Most trans people aren't like insane. Bro, I can't imagine a true trans person would ever raise their baby without a gender, because I feel like trans people understand how upsetting it can be to be confused about your gender identity. Right? Like, I would imagine a trans person would want to raise their kid as like their biological sex. They would just be more open and explorative, I guess, with a therapist if their kids started to show signs of gender dysphoria. Right? But like people that do like this baby bullshit is like fucking ridiculous.
Connecticut school nurse, 77, is suspended over transphobic Facebook post, revealing that student, 11, was on puberty blockers, 12 others were non-binary, and that teachers were helping some keep it secret.
Hospital staff told police their patient was not raped, as alleged attacker was transgender, despite CCTV.
I don't know what that is, or if that's even like a valid thing that happened.
Showing assault in ward.
Horrific, isn't it?
It's just a weird news source. It could have happened. I just don't.
Yet to see a real trans person in real life defending this bullshit, by the way.
Yeah,
now let's watch a trans activist on national television explaining why activists were caught assaulting a woman on camera.
I'm trying to give you a chance. What?
Okay, I kind of want to. Okay, I didn't know we're gonna go this deep into it.
Gender.
I just want to look into it really quick to see what's going on here. Hospital staff. He's there. I just want to take a look at this. Hospital staff advised police that a patient could not have been raped because her alleged attacker was a transgender. The house, okay, offensive attack a year ago. So the rape could not have happened because there's no male, no male was there. Neither the hospital nor the investigating police force has been named. Wait, what? Wait a minute. Okay, so here's. I'm trying to. Okay, this is the article that they're referencing. Despite the CCT. Okay, let's see. Hospital staff told police that the patient was not raped on one of their wards, as the alleged attacker was transgender, despite there being CCTV evidence to show the assault. Baroness Emma Nicholas of Winterberg raised the incident that happened a while ago with the House of Lords this week. Said that after the assault, victim filed a police report. The unnamed hospital was contacted, but they insist the rape could never happen as there was no male in the hospital. She told MPs that they forgot there was CCTV nurses and observers. Nonetheless, this was taken nearly a year for the hospital to agree that there was a male in the ward, and yes, this rape happened. During this year, she has almost come to the edge of nervous breakdown because of being disbelieved. Okay, the hospital with CCTV had to admit that the rape happened and that it was committed by a man. I'm a little confused about the specifics. Where did this happen? Because I'm not understanding why the person needed to be a man in order for it to be a rape. That's the thing I'm not understanding. Like, their identity has absolutely nothing to do with the heinous act that they committed. So I'm not understanding what the fuck's happening here. Yeah, this might not be a good source of information. I'm struggling to find a good source of information. I don't get it. And does their country have a thing where like women can't rape other women? Like, why does it matter if they're trans or cis? I'm not saying this didn't happen. I just don't understand the context. It feels like we're really out there with what's the context? There's literally nothing like okay. I don't know what's happening.
Despite CCTV showing assault in ward.
Horrific, isn't it? I have yet to see a real trans person in real life defending this bullshit, by the way.
Now let's watch a trans activist on national television explaining why activists were caught assaulting a woman on camera.
I'm trying to give you a chance.
I thought they were. Oh, this is a different instance.
Your problem with my position.
I'm going to leave the interview now. I kind of only came on here because I thought it would be kind of funny. But I want to say you're a and you're a fat.
And imagine
I have no idea what's happening there.
Struggling day in, day out whenever you look in the mirror, only to see people piggyback onto your emotions and go with this narrative.
This video is how to use her pronouns.
In my case, mine are based off of bunny. So instead of she, her, hers, herself.
I remember that person.
It's bun, buns, oneself.
For the demon pronouns, it would be Leona's.
Yeah, maybe it was more that the hospital was trying to cover it up. I mean, well, it wasn't a man, so it couldn't happen as a way to, like, deflect criticism. Oh, maybe you're right.
My partner, Deem is cute, and I belong to Deem. I love Demon very much, and I hope Deem loves Demon's self too.
This is why we get so many trans people ashamedly apologizing for these activists, and I can't help but feel annoyed on their behalf. What about you? But that's just my 2 cents.
Well, one thing I would say, because I'm fundamentally on board with like performative bullshit activists, like, hurting the narrative against trans people. But also, let's keep in mind that there are conservative individuals who will prop up these absolute fucking insane outliers of people here. And they'll say, this is all trans women. This is why transgender people are fucking, it's just a stupid bullshit mental disorder and none of them should be valid in any capacity. Right? You have to understand that, like, it goes both ways. This video was very, it was very, like, This wasn't a bad video. I like the fundamental message. I think that it just needs to be careful about, like, it's putting more criticism on the outliers existing and justifying the transphobic behavior of reactionaries, but putting no criticism at all on people propping these individuals up as if they are a valid or reasonable representation of trans people. So you probably want to keep both of those things in mind when we go through that.
Genuinely apologizing for these activists, and I can't help but feel annoyed on their behalf. What about you? But that's just my 2 cents, and I'm pretty sure I have pissed off both sides of the argument during this video, as per usual. So I look forward to reading your mudslinging insults down in comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want more content like this, please—
Yeah, it was alright. Okay. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching, and a special shout out to all my Patreon patrons, my YouTube members, and my Twitch subs. If you'd like to learn how you can contribute even more than you already are by simply watching the video, you can check the links down below, which will unlock a special feature depending on the platform that you subscribe to, such as Patreon here, that will get your name right here on this wall. Thank you so much guys again for watching, and have a good one.